It's been more than a week since the streets of Tanzania exploded. What started as scattered protests after President Samia's controversial victory has now turned into a nationwide storm. Airports are closed, flights grounded, thousands stranded, watching a nation unravel in real time. But this isn't just another post-election crisis. This is the story of a democracy on life support, a country once praised for its calm, now trembling under the weight of broken trust. How did Tanzania, once the jewel of East African stability, descend into this chaos? How did hope turn into outrage and ballots into barricades? Let's find out. October 29th, 2025, the day Tanzania changed forever. Moments after the Electoral Commission announced President Samia Hassan's victory, a staggering 97% margin, the nation erupted. In some regions, fireworks lit the night sky. In others, fires burned for a different reason. Dar es Salaam, the beating heart of Tanzania, descended into chaos. Streets once filled with life were now filled with tear gas and fear. The opposition party, Chadema, which had been barred from contesting in the election, called the result what many were already thinking, a coup disguised as democracy. Its leader declared, "The people's will has been hijacked." That statement ignited a spark, one that would set the entire country ablaze. And honestly, it's not hard to see why the opposition feels betrayed. Months before the October elections, the playing field had already been rigged. Major opposition parties, especially those with real political power, were barred from even contesting. That meant when election day arrived, President Samia's ruling party, CCM, faced only 16 minor parties with little to no influence. In truth, it wasn't a competition, it was a coronation. From the very start, everyone knew how the story would end. Samia's victory wasn't surprising, it was inevitable. But for millions of Tanzanians, this wasn't democracy, it was theater, a performance scripted to legitimize one outcome. So when the results were announced, the opposition didn't just reject them, they rebelled. Their leaders called on citizens to take to the streets. And soon, protests erupted across the nation, a wave of fury that no one could contain. The streets that once echoed with laughter now tremble with gunfire. What began as peaceful demonstrations quickly spiraled into deadly confrontations. In just 3 days, Tanzania was drowning in chaos. According to the opposition party Chadema, hundreds have been killed. They claim around 700 lives were lost in clashes with security forces. But the truth is hard to know. The government has shut down the internet, cutting the country off from the outside world. No videos, no eyewitness reports, no independent verification. A diplomatic source, speaking in hushed tones, told foreign media that at least 500 people may already be dead, a chilling number whispered through blocked networks and censored screens. Tanzania, once the symbol of peace in East Africa, had become a battlefield of silence. Moments after her sweeping victory, President Samia Hassan stepped before the cameras. She praised Tanzanians for what she called a free and fair election. She congratulated the opposition for their civility, and she called for unity. But outside the palace walls, the streets told a very different story. While the president spoke of peace, there was smoke. While she celebrated democracy, there was blood on the pavement. To many Tanzanians, this wasn't an election. It was manipulation dressed in ceremony. The opposition called it what they believed it was, a coup, a coronation. As the protests swelled, the world began to take notice, and the government did what it has always done when cornered. It cracked down. Heavily armed security forces flooded the streets. Curfews were imposed, and yet the people refused to be silenced. They came out anyway, chanting, marching, demanding their voices be heard. The result? Clashes, chaos, and death. Hundreds caught in the crossfire between a desperate government and a defiant people. Of course, the government has sought to play down the scale of the violence, and authorities have extended a curfew in a bid to quell the unrest. The demonstrations have seen mostly young protesters take to the streets in cities across Tanzania to denounce the election as unfair. They accuse the government of undermining democracy by suppressing the main opposition leaders. One is in jail and another was excluded on technical grounds, thus bolstering President Samia Suluhu Hassan's chances of winning with her ruling Chama cha Mapinduzi party. As the death toll climbed and outrage spread, the government finally broke its silence. Foreign Minister Mahmoud Kambo Thabit appeared on national television, calm and composed. He dismissed the violence as a few isolated pockets of incidents here and there. According to him, security forces acted swiftly and decisively to restore order. He even defended the internet blackout, claiming it was necessary to stop vandalism and save lives. But how does shutting down the internet save lives? How does silencing millions prevent chaos? It doesn't. It hides it. Because when the cameras go dark, power goes unchecked. When voices are cut off, the truth dies quietly. And that's the tragedy of it all. The government isn't just fighting protesters, it's fighting the narrative. It wants to control what the world sees, what the people hear, and what history remembers. But is that what democracy is about? Or has Tanzania's leadership crossed a line, from rule to control, from unity to fear? In a country that calls itself a democracy, freedom of speech should be sacred. But in Tanzania today, silence has become survival. With the internet shut down, journalists are blind. Human rights groups can't verify the dead. And hospitals, once safe spaces, have turned into guarded secrets. A source inside one hospital in Dar es Salaam whispered that they've been overwhelmed with casualties since Thursday. Every ward is full, every morgue overflowing. And it's the same story across the city. A Chadema politician, speaking from hiding, told reporters he fears for his life. He claims, massacres are being carried out under the cover of darkness, when no one is there to witness them. Security forces are hunting our leaders. Some have already fled the country. These people kill with impunity. The party says the violence didn't start after the election. It started long before. Harassment, abductions, intimidation of opposition figures, journalists, and activists. This wasn't just an election season. It was a warning that anyone who challenged power would disappear into the shadows. For ordinary Tanzanians, this election didn't just reveal corruption. It exposed old wounds that never truly healed. This isn't the first time the country has walked this path. During the era of the late President John Magufuli, the opposition was crushed under the weight of fear. Voices of dissent were silenced, critics vanished, and democracy became a word with no meaning. When President Samia Hassan took power, there was hope, a fragile hope that things would change. She began dismantling some of Magufuli's hardline policies, especially those targeting the opposition. For the first time in years, people dared to believe again. Her reforms even allowed Tundu Lissu, the exiled leader of Chadema, to finally return home. After surviving an assassination attempt and years in exile, his return symbolized a new beginning, a chance for reconciliation, maybe even redemption. But that dream didn't last long, because in 2025, the cycle began again. The same tactics, the same repression. Only this time, the face at the top had changed, but the system had not. But then, something changed. For reasons known only to President Samia, the woman once praised for her reforms began walking the same path she once condemned. The hope she inspired started to fade, and the walls began closing in again. No one knows exactly what triggered her reversal. Pressure from within her party, fear of losing control, or the weight of old loyalties. But one thing is clear: Tanzania's political wounds never healed, they only deepened. As protests intensified, the country began to shut down, piece by piece. The Julius Nyerere International Airport in Dar es Salaam, the nation's busiest gateway, fell silent. Dozens of domestic and international flights were canceled. Even Emirates Airlines, one of Tanzania's biggest international carriers, suspended all operations, citing safety concerns and staff mobility issues. The chaos didn't stop there. Similar shutdowns were reported at Zanzibar International Airport, Kilimanjaro, and Arusha. The country that once prided itself on stability now looked like a nation under siege, paralyzed by fear, uncertainty, and unrest. Across Tanzania, the country's lifelines began to choke. Roadblocks, curfews, a total breakdown in communication. Travelers were stranded, trapped between airports and uncertainty. "We were supposed to fly from Zanzibar to Paris," said French tourist Irvine Renee, her voice trembling. "But our flight to Nairobi was canceled, so we're stuck here. We don't know where to stay, or even where to sleep tonight." For many, this was more than inconvenience. It was a disaster in motion. Because in Tanzania, tourism isn't just leisure, It's survival. The nation is home to some of the world's most treasured landscapes, the Serengeti, Ngorongoro Crater, and the legendary Selous Game Reserve, the largest on Earth. Over 120,000 elephants, 160,000 buffaloes, 2,000 rhinos, a natural kingdom that draws millions of visitors every year. In 2024 alone, Tanzania's tourism industry saw a 17.5% surge in international arrivals, reaching 2.2 million visitors and generating $3.4 billion in revenue. It became the nation's top source of foreign exchange, even surpassing gold. But now, with airports closed and chaos spreading, that lifeline is in danger. The same skies that once carried tourists and prosperity now carry only uncertainty. And the question that haunts every Tanzanian tonight: how long before this storm destroys more than just their democracy? Just a year ago, Tanzania was celebrating a milestone. 2024 marked a record 5.3 million international visitors, a new high for a nation famed for its Serengeti safaris, the turquoise beaches of Zanzibar, and the snow-capped majesty of Mount Kilimanjaro. The future looked bright. New flight routes were opening. The government had launched ambitious marketing campaigns through the Tanzania Tourism Board. The world was finally rediscovering Tanzania. But that was before the protests, before the shutdown, before the silence. Now, the same industry that lifted the nation's economy is under threat. Tour operators report waves of cancellations, anxious calls, and delayed bookings. We've had multiple inquiries from overseas guests who are worried about the situation, said one operator from Arusha, the gateway to Tanzania's northern safari circuit. He pauses, then adds quietly, "So far, the wildlife areas remain calm, but travelers are nervous. And uncertainty is never good for tourism, because in a country where nature is the heartbeat of the economy, chaos doesn't just hurt politics, it endangers livelihoods." The question now isn't just about democracy, it's about survival. For now, Tanzania's national parks and coastal resorts remain open. The lions still roam the Serengeti. The waves still crash against Zanzibar's white sands. But outside those postcard views, a different story unfolds. The unrest in major cities is poisoning Tanzania's global image, once hailed as one of Africa's safest, most stable destinations. And in today's world, perception is everything. Travelers rely on social media, real-time updates, and video clips to decide where they feel safe. But with the internet blackout, that transparency has vanished. Confusion spreads faster than truth. Tourists already inside the country are cut off. Those abroad are choosing not to come. Even if the game parks are peaceful, said one regional travel consultant, visitors need to feel connected and informed. When communication breaks down, confidence breaks down too. And that collapse in confidence ripples far beyond tourism. Because this industry isn't just about safaris and beaches, it's about people. It fuels nearly 18% of Tanzania's GDP, keeping hundreds of thousands of citizens employed in hotels, airlines, markets, and small family businesses. When the planes stop landing, it's not just tourism that dies, it's livelihoods, dreams, and the fragile hope that Tanzania can once again rise above its own storm. However, if the unrest and protests continue, the impact could ripple far beyond hotels and tour operators. Airlines might reduce routes, conferences could be postponed, and global investors may hesitate to commit to long-term tourism projects. Neighboring countries like Kenya and Rwanda, which market themselves as politically stable destinations, could benefit as travelers reroute their plans. The damage to perception can outlast the unrest itself, noted a Nairobi-based economist. It takes years to build trust, but only weeks of instability to lose it. Not surprisingly, the international community has already begun to react. Several countries, including the United Kingdom, the United States, and Canada, have advised their citizens against traveling to Tanzania after the country's general election. The UN Human Rights Office expressed concern over the reported violence and the scale of the internet shutdown. A spokesperson called on Tanzanian authorities to respect freedom of assembly and restore communication access. International observers are urging the government to ease tensions through dialogue rather than force, warning that prolonged unrest could jeopardize Tanzania's standing as a democratic model in East Africa. Human Rights Watch had asked the Tanzanian government to ensure accountability for all election-related deaths, citing point-blank shootings reported by various residents. The Tanzanian authorities' violent and repressive response to election-related protests further undermines the credibility of the electoral process, said Oriam Nyeko, senior Africa researcher at Human Rights Watch. The rights group also called for the full restoration of internet connectivity, saying that restrictions violate the right to freedom of expression and access to information. Currently, the government of Tanzania has partially restored the internet while warning that citizens should not share photos and videos that may cause panic. According to reports from citizens, every mobile phone user received a text message on Monday night saying that sharing images that could cause panic or demean human life would lead to treason charges. Imagine that. The messages came shortly after the internet was reconnected, when people began sharing unverified images of bodies they claimed were victims of the election protests. A social media page that had been uploading videos and photos of purported election protest victims was pulled down on Monday evening after attracting thousands of followers within a day. All of what is happening right now in Tanzania shows clearly that the country is not practicing democracy as it claims. And the same can be said of other African countries like Cameroon and Ivory Coast, where leaders used force to ensure they remain in power. As we watch the unfolding events that will happen in the week to come, we can't help but wonder about the state of Africa's governance. The big question is, can Africa truly govern itself? What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel.